As you guys can probably tell from me making content on 2 channels for like 2 years, I love me some graveyard stuff. One of my favorite things to do in card games, both Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, is to mill and discard my shit into the graveyard and then revive massive guys or overcosted guys with great effects. I love the aesthetic of zombies and skeletons and ghosts. I love making cards that would normally be awful because they cost like 7 mana into something usable and fun. It allows for a lot of variety in what you run. It's just a great time and I can't get enough of it. I also really like resource engines, filling your board with a little bit of stuff each turn like treasure or blood or clues, rummaging a bit each turn to fill your grave to get descend triggers. I just love simple little resource engines to get you a bit of advantage each turn. Today's commander that we're covering is a mix of the two, the Ancient One, a commander from Lost Caverns of Ixalan that I feel is underrated and would recommend to anyone who likes this kind of deck. We'll go over the commander, talk about the deck's goals and playstyles, then do sort of a card by card in the different categories. Note that as usual, I'm not an expert, this is just my opinion on these cards, and if I personally run them or not. Cards I love you can hate, cards I dislike you can find fun and amazing, and so on. Also, this is not meant to be an end-all list, just recommendations and discussion to give you a starting point to build off of, especially here where a lot of the categories are way more put in whatever you like here than normal. With that being said, let's get into the commander and get started. The Ancient One is an 8/8 legendary spirit god that costs just a blue and a black and reads, Descend 8, the Ancient One can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. You can also pay 2 a blue and a black to draw a card, discard a card, and when you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. The first thing to note is that, of course, an 8/8 for 2 mana is genuinely kind of fucking insane, letting you get out your commander early and often if it ever gets removed too, which makes stuff that gets better whenever you cast your commander way better than in some other decks. The drawback of not being able to attack or block unless you have a full graveyard is barely a drawback. You're going to fill your graveyard very quickly with plenty of rummaging, self-mill, aristocrats, and so on, so it's not going to take that long to get to 8 permanents in your graveyard, though you will have to keep it in mind. The last thing, of course, is that final ability. It doesn't seem like much at first, but it gets you a good way to rummage and mill each turn, even if it's a decent bit of mana at times. 9 times out of 10 you're going to be milling yourself to fill your own descend abilities, but keep in mind that you can mill other people if you want to. It's just that you don't want to that often, unless your build is directly supporting that. There's a lot of directions you can take the deck, but the one we're going to focus on is a main theme of rummaging and milling to fill our graveyard with big creatures to revive and recur, cheating out massive creatures or overcosted ones with good effects. As for a sub-theme, our commander gets us a way to draw at least a card every turn at instant speed, so cards that get us tokens or get bigger or have some kind of trigger whenever we draw a card are going to help us fill our board or finish games. Lastly, we're of course going to be running cards that get better the more full our graveyard is. Obviously, even more than usual, like I said, we can't cover every big creature or every self-mill card. We're just going to go over some highlights with some recommendations I can give for you guys to start off with. With that being said, let's get started on the deck itself with In order to make our commander an 8/8 threat and make a lot of our finishers work, we're going to need a full graveyard, and that means self-milling ourselves and rummaging and looting in order to fill it without losing card advantage. I decided to lump these into one category since they serve the same purpose for the most part, and neither section would be that long on their own. Also of note is that some of the stuff we'll cover in later sections will have mill, rummaging, or looting as an aspect to it, but like with a lot of these, this shit's hard to categorize, so you're going to have to bear with me. Also, I might use rummaging and looting interchangeably at times, and I apologize. I know they're different things, just bear with me. Deathcap Marionette is a great early game death toucher that also gets you started on filling your graveyard, while also being able to take care of any early game blockers. It's not mind blowing or anything, but it's a great early game card that can come in handy in the late game as well. Dreadwing Scavenger is a really cool card. Getting you a discard as an ETB that's repeatable whenever it attacks too is pretty great for such a low amount of mana, especially for a 2/2 flyer that becomes a 3/3 Death Toucher flyer pretty easily. Getting this out early can fix any hand issues you might have, while also filling your grave early easily. Likeness Loot is a great card that there's not tons to say about. Its first effect to loot is good, and it becoming a copy of anything in your graveyard can really come in handy in the late game, making it useful at most stages of the game, especially since its first effect fuels the second. Obsessive Stitch is a card that we've covered in other videos, so I'll keep it brief and say it's a good defender that can also loot and lets you revive something big. Not tons to say, just a good card. Stitch Your Supplier is the same thing as Death Cap, except it also mills when it dies and loses Death Touch. Not a lot to say that I didn't say about Death Cap. Seer Conrad's a classic. It's just a great way to get incidental damage as you fill or empty your graveyard, but it's even better here since that mill can 100% come in handy and isn't always just a thing you can do if your deck isn't already milling. I could totally see this becoming kinda boring though, since you're going to be milling and rummaging so much that it can just randomly close out games without any fun or fanfare. Vohar Vodalian Desecrator is another great looter that can also drain some life if you're in a shitty situation where you have to discard a non-permanent. Its second ability is a great way to make up for the feels bad of milling a sorcery or instant you can't do much with otherwise. You could argue that another chance belongs in Recursion, but I could also argue that you're a doo-doo head, so it looks like we're at a fucking impasse. It's a good way to get cheap mill in with some pretty good recursion, and keep in mind that it says up to, meaning you can get back 1 if you wanted to, so it's very rarely a dead card, unlike some other cards that require a specific number. You can also get 0 if you want to, but I don't think that's going to happen. Extract from Darkness is a card I love and put in a lot of the Dimir decks. Milling everyone and getting back any creature from your graveyard is versatile, while also filling your graveyard a little bit. I could see someone thinking 5 mana is too much for this card nowadays, but I still like it. Refute is my counterspell of choice these days, and it's even better here than in a lot of other decks because of the discard, so I'd say run it. Singularity Rapture is a decent card, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I'm at least trying it out. 6 mana is a lot, but a full board wipe and milling half your library is hard to pass up. I could see someone thinking 6 mana is a lot for this though, so keep an eye out for other board wipes you may prefer if this doesn't work out for you. As for ones we could run, there's so many mill cards and rummagers and looters, but I'll try to cover some. Assassin's Gauntlet is a great way to get in some more damage if you have a big enough creature out, and also lets you loot when it deals combat damage, but I feel like we had enough of this without relying on the equipment. Canyon Crab is an early game defender that can give a little boost in a pinch that also lets you loot, but it's during the end step and only under specific conditions, so it's not the best in my opinion. Collector's Vault gets you a loot for 2 mana and gets you a treasure, but I feel the treasure doesn't help much in a 2-color deck like this, and it's just not worth the mana. Sacking the treasure does count as a permanent hitting the graveyard though, if you have stuff that triggers with that. Currency Counter is good since you'll be discarding a lot without even using its loot effect, but it's nearly $11 by itself, and I feel like it doesn't do enough for me to want to proxy it or go past my budget for this. Oh no. I hope I pronounced this right. Emmett Selch. Emmett Selk? I'm going to go with Emmett Selch. It's a good defender for its mana cost that also loots in a similar way to Scavenger. Its second effect to transform could happen, but 14 is a pretty high number, and what you get out of it is kind of a non-bow since the force exiles anything you discard or mill. If you make this thing, you better have it on a turn where you can finish your opponents off, because this thing sticking around ruins your deck's entire game plan. I love me some Death Touch Lifelink, but I feel that Tomebound Lich was the least good of my looters, so 07 in the chat, I guess. Deranged Assistant and Milliken both get you a mill and a colorless mana dork, but in my personal hand testing and practice, they haven't super come up, but I'd say try them out and see if they click with you more than they did me, and definitely run them if you feel you're having mana issues that colorless mana could resolve. Ripples of Underneath is a great card, but there's not tons to say. Great way to self-mill that also gets an extra card in your hand. It's just $7, so you know it got cut. Sivris Nightmare Speaker, I hope I pronounced that right, is pretty good. It lets you mill 3 cards while also getting you a sacrifice outlet, getting you advantage if your opponent chooses not to pay the 3 life. It just takes a bit to resolve since you do it 1 by 1, and the fact that you have to wait a turn and it's 4 mana and it's kind of removal bait puts me off of it. You can try it out though, not a bad card. Avenheart Stabber is pretty good. A 3/3 Death Toucher flyer with a full graveyard's decent, but I like Dreadwing Scavenger more personally. Crow of Dark Tidings is death cap but 3 mana, but in return it also mills when it dies. I like it, but it feels not super needed in my current build. Mire Triton is Death Cap, but 1 mana more and has a small bit of life gain. I just feel like playing Death Cap turn 1 is too good to want both, especially when 2 life isn't that much of a benefit most of the time. Recursion Monument is better in builds that focus on milling out your opponents rather than yourself. It can double up your graveyard, but it feels a bit excessive, though its first ability being repeatable mill 2 is great. Venomized Cat is nothing special, but it's cute. Look at it. Look at it. No, I'm serious. Give it a look. It's cute. Shout out to dredge cards, probably the best millers in the game. I don't personally run them as, like I said before, my Gitrog monster deck is a dredge deck and I wanted as little overlap between the two as I can get away with. But if you really want, I recommend Golgari Thug and Stinkweed Imp the most. They're my favorites. Okay, that's all I really want to cover for this. There's so many millers and rummagers and looters. I can't cover them all, so I hope this gave you enough stuff to work with, you know? Our commander has a built-in draw effect that isn't even once per turn, while also filling our graveyard. A decent number of our cards are going to be massive finishers, so some of our defense is going to rely on smaller cards that get better when we draw cards, either by making themselves stronger or by filling our board with tokens, or even making decent defenders, as well as having a lot of draw power in general, so we have more to rummage through. Baleful Strix is a basic Dimir staple that draws a card on ETB, while also being easy to revive due to its small mana value and being a smaller creature, and it's also a decent Death Touch flyer to use as a blocker. That's kind of weird. This is like the 3rd or 4th Death Touch flyer in this list. Anyway, it's a good card. Chasm Skulker gets bigger and bigger each turn, and unlike some other draw payoffs, this one does it for your draw step too, so you don't even need to rely on outside draw power for it, and if you use some Aristocrat strats or need to use it as a blocker, it even fills your field with little squids, which are unblockable against blue players and make for decent blockers. It's one of my favorite cards in the deck, and I feel I don't see it enough in other decks personally. Emrakul's Messenger ramps you decently well, but keep in mind that it's only colorless mana, though we'll take what we can get since Dimir ramp kinda sucks ass. Ethereal Investigator is a mediocre flyer all things considered, but in making 3 clue tokens to get you a bit of extra draw power and trick your other draw matter cards, that also creates tokens when you draw your second card, giving you some decent blockers and defense. It also lets you get in for some chip damage with them. It's a good card, it's just not an amazing one or a favorite or anything. Fear of Failed Tests is a big mood, but it's also a big defender that can get you a lot of draws, especially if you pump it with other effects. We don't have a ton of ways to make it bigger in our build, but even if you just swing with it every once in a while to force your opponent to block it so they avoid you drawing 2, that's a decent use case for it. Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper is kinda just Ethereal Investigator, except you're trading the tokens being good defense for being more evasive attackers, a smaller mana cost, and lifelink. I like it, and that little gator friend's really cute too. Gurgling Anointer gets bigger each turn and has decent insurance if it gets removed after all your hard work. Not much to say about it. Homunculus Horde may cost a bit, but getting this out within the first few turns can become a huge board of copies, which can easily get out of hand. They're not the biggest creatures and they don't have keywords, but they make for decent attackers, especially early game, and give you some more stuff to sacrifice for aristocrat effects if you have them. Horrid Shadow Spinners are good lifelinker that also get you a buttload of draws, however much load a butt is, while also getting you some life. If you have some more stuff to make it even bigger, it's even better than it already is. Mischievous Mystic is basically a Spirit Keeper, but it makes fairies instead of spirits. Not much to say that I haven't said about the other 2 cards, so the next card. Starving Revenant is a decent draw on ETB that also gets you a Surveil to fill your grave, but if your grave is full, you honestly just kind of win sometimes. Drawing a bunch of cards in a turn can just drain your opponents for a lot of life, and even does it drain every single one of your turns just from when you draw for a turn. It's a great card. Brain Surge is just a great draw spell. Even if you have to put cards back, it can still trigger draw payoffs. Deep Analysis is a good draw spell that also is reusable and is not even a bad thing to rummage away or mill. I'd recommend 100%, but it's kind of a staple, so I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Frantic Search is a good draw spell, not much to say. Tainted Indulgence is an underrated draw spell in my opinion. I really like it in like 99% of decks with the mirror in them that care about the graveyard, and it's even good in here if you haven't reached the full grave stipulation. Look, I can't cover draw spells. There's so many. So many. So we'll just cover the payoffs, not the outlets. Keep in mind that the rummagers we covered beforehand also trigger these. If you're going for an opponent mill strategy more than we do, Aether Siphon is a decent option since it's not a once per turn effect and affects each opponent. We're not going for that though, so we're not running it. Alondra Skydreamer can make for a good finisher if you draw enough cards in a turn, but it only makes a Drake once per turn. We don't have other Drakes, and the 5th draw effect isn't going to happen too often. Diviner's Wand is an okay equipment that can help close out games. I think its equipability is a bit much, but it's fine. If you equip it to something like Fear or Failed Tests, it can get pretty big, and since you draw cards equal to the damage, it'll double in power, which, while it's post-combat, you can still use that with some effects that drain for power or draw you even more cards. It's just not useful enough for me to consider personally. Nadir Kraken can make some tentacle tokens while also getting bigger itself, but you have to pay 1 mana each time, and I usually don't find myself with enough extra mana for that to come up. If your build's better about ramp, then go for it. Ominous Seas is a great card, getting you a big 8/8 token, but you don't really proliferate, and you usually don't draw 8 cards over a turn or two, so it's a bit slow here for me, but I could see me trying it at some point. Sphinx's Tutelage is a great card if you're going for a build that mills your opponent out, and it can really get out of hand really fast. I wish it could target yourself, but I get that's not the purpose or intention of the card, so it's fine. Teferi's Talent can make your favorite Planeswalker in these colors kinda crazy. It can easily get you to any Planeswalker's ultimate ability. But we don't run any Planeswalkers, so it's not for us. The Watcher in the Water is a good token generator, but we already have enough token generators here in my opinion, and it entering with the counters means it's still stunned even when you revive it or cheat it in. I can see others liking it more than me though. Wizard class is one of the cards I mentioned before that can get stuff like Shadow Spinner bigger, but it takes so much mana to get that far that I personally don't like it that much. Now that we talked about ways to fill our graveyard and ways to fill our hands so we can rummage and discard them away, let's talk about our payoffs for having a full graveyard once we have one. Chupacabra Echo is a pretty okay removal spell with a decent body that also dodges indestructible, which is nice. It's also on enters and not cast, so you can revive it easily if you're in a rough spot. Consuming Aberration can get decently big later in the game, and is a nice thing to revive. It's even better, of course, if we were on the opponent mill version of this deck, but it's still decent here, and its last ability can come in clutch sometimes too, though it's a bitch to track. I hate tracking this card, and I can understand that being a turnoff for a lot of people. Can't Wake Up is a good way to fill your graveyard for 2 mana, although it can hit opponents if you need it to, and Cruel Somnophage, I guess, is also a bitch to track, but it can get crazy big, just like Aberration. Kiora the Rising Tide gets you a great double rummage when it enters, and it even makes you massive tokens if your graveyard is full, which is great for board presence. Night Howler makes for a pretty good attacker for 3 mana, but also can make some of your other creatures insane. Putting this on a Fear or Failed Test, for example, can get you so many cards. 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to play this as an aura and not a creature, but it makes for a decent thing to revive too. Souls of the Lost is, another guy that gets bigger depending on your graveyard size. Talking about this would be talking about the same card for a 3rd time, so this one gives you a sack outlet to hit death triggers if you want. That's about the only thing that sets it apart. It's decently cheap mana-wise. Wonder doesn't care about a full grave, but it cares about being in the graveyard, so I think it counts. It can be easily milled, dumped, discarded, whatever, and gives your whole board evasion. What's not to love? Also, I'm using the objectively best art, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Circular Logic is a basic counterspell that, at a certain point, just counters any spell. It normally wouldn't be that great due to there being other 2 or 3 mana counterspells that are less specific, but with a decent amount of looting in the deck, its madness effect can make it way better. I like it, but I can see you cutting it if you think that madness isn't enough to justify this. Okay, so I've done the bit where I can't pronounce a card name, so I put something silly in, and it's an overdone bit by me probably, but look at this. I'll try. Mazzalanti? Mazzalanti? The Great Door. would normally be not good since it's a 3-mana looter when we have plenty of 2-drop ones that also have bodies, but what really matters is what it transforms into. A really good land that can get you a crazy amount of mana in the late game, which comes in handy to use your commander's ability multiple times, especially in Dimir, where again, our ramp sucks ass. It's a great card here. Overwhelming Remorse can easily become a 1-mana exile removal spell, which is great. I understand if you thought it was too useless early game though, but I feel we're grindy enough to make it useful. Song of the Damned is, ew, old frame. I'm sorry, I just find retro frames so ugly. Like, I get the nostalgia factor, but this is so hideous to me. Bring up the modern version. Much better. Anyways, I mean, obviously this is good. Getting you a burst of mana for the late game while also getting you a decent boost in the early game to get ahead. The Everflowing Well is a great draw spell that also fills your graveyard a bit and transforms into another really good land, turning anything you control into a copy of any permanent you cast, even making a basic token or land you control into a copy of something. It's one of my favorite cards in the deck. Wail of the Forgotten is great in the late game, bouncing a creature, making your opponent discard, filling your graveyard, and getting you, not a draw, but basically one. In the early game it works perfectly fine as a removal spell or a way to get your graveyard started. As for ones you can run that I don't, Apocalypse Demon is fine. It's just not as good as the other guys we run with a similar effect, and flying is not worth the extra cost in my opinion. The cost to keep it untapped can be helpful as an aristocrat thing, I guess, but there's better stuff for that too, really. Avenger of the Fallen can make you a massive board of tokens in the late game. I just couldn't find room for it, especially with the tokens going away at the end step. If you run more aristocrat stuff, the tokens can make for great sack fodder though. The Cauldron of Eternities is interesting. A lot of graveyard decks use aristocrat stuff to fill their grave, and this may be a bit iffy there for me, but in here, we mostly mill and discard, which doesn't count, so it could be a great way to revive something every turn if you like it. Criminal Past can make your commander even bigger, but I mean, our commander's already an 8/8, what do you want? Fear of Death can make a problem creature smaller, but in my opinion, if you shrink a big guy down power-wise, it'd still make for a good enough blocker for that not to matter. Festive Funeral is fine. I guess it's decent if you run it indestructible enough to need it, but I don't want to run it. Mausoleum Secrets is a tutor that's cheap money-wise, but tutors are boring. Cragfeast is a fine removal spell option, not much to say. Siegfried, Famed Swordsman, can become an absolutely massive powerhouse, and is an evasive menacer? Menace haver? Menace? It's good is what I'm trying to say here. Wall of Tombstone sucks, but look at this fucking thing. Why does it change its toughness at the end of each turn? Why does it change at the end of each turn instead of just be... Whatever. Old Magic's weird, man. Old Magic is fucking trip, man. So now that our graveyard is full, let's go over the cards we're going to use to abuse it. Honestly, a short section because it's just mostly revival spells. Let's get this over with. Bloodghast is a recurable sack fodder card that can also get in for some okay damage since blocking it and killing it won't do much with it coming back so easily. Doomed Necromancer is a basic revival ability that also sacks itself for any death trigger stuff you may be running. And everything else, Coiling Rebirth is a pretty fine revival spell that also gets you a copy if you politics a draw away for added benefits. Defossilize is a slightly overcosted revival spell, but lets it explore twice, which fills your graveyard while also making what you revived bigger. Dread Return is a decent card that's also useful if it gets milled. Stitched Together is a fine recursion spell that also turns into a great revival spell late game. Unearth is good, Victimize is good. As for ones we don't run but you can, is that enough? Is that enough revival spells? I can keep going. No? Okay, that's good, I think. Time for the stuff we're reviving, which is obviously the most subjective category here, since it's kind of just whatever big creatures you really like. If you have a favorite, you can probably slot it in here just fine. Dreadhound is a great 6/6 that also gets you a decent mill on ETB that also can end games if you mill enough cards, especially since it hits every opponent. They're also a good boy, a proper heckin' pupper Keanu Chungus 100. One of my friends told me to say that, don't blame me. Mythical Beast Garuda is a great pendulum monster, getting you an alright pop that can also trigger Electromite, though it only really applies in Master Duel since that's the only place Electromite is legal, and it also gets you a decent bounce if your field is... Huh? Oh, Gyruda! Gyruda's companion effect doesn't matter, though I guess it could if you build it with it in mind, but it makes her a good body that also mills everyone and revives something, which feels even better if you bring it back with a Doom Necromancer for like 1 mana. Junji the Midnight Sky is a pretty good body that also revives something else when it dies. The discard effect could come up, but you're going to revive something 99% of the time. Ko the Face Stealer can probably be gross since it exiles anything that dies, especially with it being optional, so you can let your stuff hit the grave and exile only your opponent's stuff, but I think it's a cool enough design. This is where I'd put an Avatar reference, but I've never seen it. Next card. Massacre Worm is Massacre Worm. It causes a board wipe of smaller creatures that can also cause a lot of life loss, all in a good body. It's a semi-staple in decks like this for a reason. Sepulchral Primordial. Did I get that right? It's normally overcosted for my taste, but reviving it gets you 3 revives on a decently sized Intimidator. Shadowgrange Archfiend. Look, I already made a Yu-Gi-Oh joke. Let's move on. It's a great removal option that also gets you some decent life. It's easy to get in with its madness effect, and it's a huge attacker. Normally it'd be out of my budget, but I bought the Strafon Precon, which was my first video. Click link up there. So if it's out of your budget, pick another big boy. It's not required or anything. Starwinder is just fear of failed tests that cost more, but it's on a bigger body. Anything I said about it can apply here. I can't go over every big thing to revive, but here's some options. I'll mostly stick to just ones with synergy and ones that I really like personally. Fleet Swallower is a big 6/6 that fills your graveyard to an insane level, but you do have to wait a turn, and it being $2 or $3 put me over budget, so I had to cut something. Hulk Burster Swarm is fine. If you want an evasive 6/6 for cheap, it's fine. It just doesn't do enough for me. Nemesis of Reason is good if you're playing a version that more so mills your opponents out rather than yourself. Nezahal Primal Tide can help with your hand getting out of hand by getting rid of your max hand size while also giving you another easy draw outlet, and can blink itself for some reason. I guess it's dodge removal. That could come up, I guess. Screeching Scorch Beast is a good doubly evasive creature that mills everyone with rad counters and can fill your board with tokens. I just needed to cut something because my mana curve was a fucking nightmare, dude. Tertian Mindbreaker is good if you're more so focused on milling your opponents out rather than you, and even as a way to revive itself if you don't have a recursion card, even if it is just for a turn. You can play Toxtrol if you hate your friends and don't want them to invite you to the next Commander game. Thieving Amalgam is a big monkey that has a unique effect, stealing your opponent's top deck as a manifest that you can flip up. Its second effect is fine, but you don't really run other steal effects outside of some revivals from other graveyards. I can see your playgroup finding it kind of annoying to keep up with though. Also keep in mind that to flip the manifest card up, you have to pay the color of the manifest cost. Alright, just put whatever other big creatures you like here, it'll be fine. We obviously run Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, duh, but we also have stuff like Songs of the Damned and Emrakul's Messenger. Dimir doesn't really have great access to ramp, and I've been toying with other mana rocks and some of the mana darks. It's just hard to find the ones that are impactful and good enough. In 2-color decks, I tend to go for 10 or 11-ish of each mana, adding up to 21 basic lands total. A lot of this is your standard lands, but there's some I can probably scrape a sentence or two together about. For fuck's sake. Agnaquella gives you another discard outlet in a pinch if your commander doesn't stick around. Fetid Pools and Lonely Sandbar have cycling abilities that get you a draw and puts another permanent and permanent type in your graveyard. Hidden Necropolis gets you a descend trigger by sacrificing itself, and it's another way to put a land in your graveyard. Nephalia Drownyard is another decent repeatable mill outlet. Port of Carvel is a land that sacrifices itself to mill and gets some decent recursion, even if 6 mana and getting rid of a land is a bit much. Rogue's Passage is a way to make your commander get in for commander damage, and with an 8/8 commander you can easily make bigger, it can just end games. Putting a Night Howler on your commander and swinging him with Rogue's Passage can easily just take somebody out of the game. Otherwise, like I said, it's a lot of the basic shit that most Dimir decks run, you know? So a lot of our good stuff also just applies to cards in previous categories, like we've already talked about our draw power in other categories since it's a main aspect to the deck. And a lot of our removal gets better with a full grave, so we already talked about those. We have Rapid Hybridization, Infernal Grasp, and Bitter Triumph for more basic removal spells. There's not much else to say because, again, we talked about them all already. Just go back to the draw section for our draw spells. Also, I don't know where else to put this. So, Training Grounds makes your commander only cost 2 mana for its second effect and is really good, but it's too expensive for my build. That's about it. Next section. Oh boy, a tip section. We haven't had one of these in a bit. Okay, so first thing I suppose is if you want to play this deck, I'm sorry to tell you this, you're going to have to do math. You're going to have to keep track of bullshit, and you're going to have to pay attention. I'm so sorry to tell you that. The size of your graveyard does matter here, and some cards ask for permanents, some just for creatures, some for non-creatures, and so on. It could be a bitch to track. But there are ways to get around this. They're all kind of annoying to different extents. I've seen people use a life wheel from a precon to count up when stuff's in the grave. You could use infinite tokens and just make sure to pay attention. If your playgroup doesn't have, like, I don't know, shallow grave, you could separate your permanents from your non-permanents and so on. It's annoying to keep track of, but that's what you sign up for with a deck like this. So you're going to have to deal with it and find a cool way to get around it that works for you. Also, keep in mind that your commander's ability does not tap it. It's obviously not once per turn, and you can do it on any player's turn. So if you have something out that gets you a benefit whenever you draw, you can do it on each player's turn if you have enough mana to do so. But keep in mind, it won't trigger whenever you draw your second card type effects unless you do it multiple times on an opponent's turn. In addition, the key to playing any graveyard deck, for the most part, is to think of your graveyard as a second hand at times. You have access to Recursion both by adding things back to your hand, as well as bringing them back to the battlefield, and you also have access to some graveyard effects at times like Dredge or Flashback. You always want to keep track of that kind of thing and keep it in your mind. Don't be afraid, for the most part, to discard or mill an important card, as most times you'll have something in your library or even in your hand to get it back for you. You also have to be wary of Graveyard Exile. Bojuka Bog, for example, is going to be your worst nightmare here, as it can get rid of a lot of cards you need from your grave and just shut your deck down if played late enough. So sometimes it may be best to hold back a little bit until you can make sure you get everything you want in a turn. We talked about this a little bit in other places, but here's some cards that don't fit in the other categories that you could run specifically if you want to focus on milling your opponents out rather than yourself. This isn't going to be a massive section, just some highlights for that playstyle, since it is apparently more popular than the build I'm going for on EDH Rec, and some people are probably here to look at that instead. Bruvac doubles any mills your opponents are hit with, which is obviously great here. Ruin Crab can make for a decent defender that can get your mills started. You're not really going to play a ton of ramp, but if you're onto this build, you could put in some Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse to mill them for 6 cards in a turn. Hedron Crab is basically the same card. Phoenix God of Deception turns your commander into a way to mill your opponent for 8, which is a great way to mill out opponents. Using this to mill someone for 8, then using your commander's ability to mill them for another 7 or more by discarding a big spell is crazy, especially since your commander is not a once per turn. The Mind Skinner turns all of your damage into mills, allowing you to run more aggressive options to mill out easier, and since your graveyard will probably be filled too, you'll have enough big things to revive to make this great. Valvagoth Terror Eater's unfun, but it's crazy here. One of the issues with milling decks is your opponent kind of wants a big graveyard if they're in black, and this is a way to get around that downside permanently, removing anything while also getting you a chance of stealing those cards for yourself. Duskmantle Guildmage is an alternate win condition in the deck, doing some decent damage. until you realize you can use its ability multiple times. If you do it 2 to 3 times in one turn, they will take 3 damage per card that you mill from their deck, and can just kill all 3 opponents out of nowhere. Do this 3 times and play a maddening cacophony, and you just take out everyone else sometimes. And if you have a training grounds out, your commander can just kill everyone using its ability once or twice. The issue, of course, is you're going to have to pay 3 mana each time you want to stack its ability, but if you can get past that, it's a great finisher in the archetype that usually only has one way of killing. Unseal the Necropolis is fine, but there's not much to say. I just want to show how fucking sick this art is, dude. I fucking love this art. Look at it. Memory Plunder is a great way to steal stuff that you milled. Maddening Cacophony is a great mill spell that can finish games sometimes. Cut Your Losses costs a lot, but if you sacrifice a small creature, you can mill 2 opponents for half, which is obviously a ton. And no, copying this and targeting the same player twice won't make them mill their entire library at one go. That's not how math works. Fractured Sanity is good, also giving you an alright cycle in a pinch. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is good, there's nothing to say about it though. Again, this is not a video about the build that mills other players, so those are just some options. I just wanted to cover it since a lot of people probably want to build it this way instead, you know? Hi, time for the unscripted part of this video where I just go over the deck itself, I guess. A link to this deck list will obviously be in the description if you want to look at it or copy it to edit or whatever. This one's probably going to be straightforward because there's not a ton to say. This is a very basic deck, and there's not much that I can talk about that I didn't already talk about in the video itself. Sorry if my voice is weird or if I'm breathing weird. It's just I'm a little bit sick right now, but I can record this for like 15 minutes. It's not a huge deal, but I'm sorry if that bugs you. I will say that I put in a deranged assistant, and where is it? Emrakul's Messenger. I put those in because I feel like the deck actually, in retrospect, did need more ramp, because there were multiple times in hand testing where my hand was like a Massacre Worm, a Gyruda, and shit like a Shadowgrange Archfiend, and there was just not enough mana to play them all. And there was a few times where I drew like 3 drops and 4 drops, and I just needed to be a little bit, farther ahead mana-wise or whatever. Our mana curve is fine, I think, because we have a bunch of 1s, 2s, and 3s, and then 4, 5, 6, 7s, 6, 7, I don't know. We have enough, 6 and 7s and 4s and 5s to have decent payoffs or whatever while not being overly clumpy on them, I feel. 36 lands, I feel, is a fine number. I usually go 36 to 38, around that, while trying to hit 37 as often as I can. But I think 36 is fine for the sake of this video and what we're doing with the deck or whatever. There's not tons to say about it, like I said, so I think we're just going to go on to hand testing, I suppose. Yeah, our mana curve's fine. Our things usually, this is weirdly closer than 6. Why is there 367 jokes in this fucking video? Either way, these are decently close to each other, which usually I don't always try to make it even, but it's always nice when it happens to go out that way. Let's do some hand testing. Playtest. I did a hand test earlier. This hand's pretty fucking good. Let's draw. The rule is we go until we get to turn 10. I think I'm gonna go Swamp and then play Stitcher Supplier, which makes us mill 3 cards. I don't really like milling Unearth, but I guess that's fine. I don't really want to mill non-permanents. Oh my fucking god, I milled only non-permanents. It's fine. It's fine. And I guess that would be our turn, right? This doesn't have any keywords or anything? Yeah. Seer Conrad's pretty good. I wish I milled that instead. We can't really do tons right now, so I think I'm going to go these 2 and play a Dimir Signet so that we're up a bit on mana. Seer Conrad's really helpful. It's just that it's 5 mana, and we only have access to 3 mana at the moment, but it should be fine. Let's go to the next turn. Chasm Skulker's really fucking good. 2 or more basic lands. Let's go with Sunken Hollow, and then here's the hard part. That's 4, right? So I can go 1, 2 blue for a Chasm Skulker, who'll get bigger whenever I draw. which is really good because a lot of the cards in here get bigger when you draw your second card or when you draw a card outside of your draw phase or whatever. So it's always nice to get one that fucking counts your normal draw. So let's go to the next turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this. That doesn't... Yeah, creature card. We can go Sir Conrad, I think, right? Because we can play an island and then 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go for Sir Conrad. And then next turn we'll play our commander, I think. Goodness. I think that's all we can do. We could... theoretically, by the way, we're attacking with things or whatever. Let's say we attack with this, and then they block it. So it dies because it's a 1/1. And then we mill 3 more cards. Non-permanent. That's at least a permanent. That's at least a permanent. Whatever. Oh, God. Sorry if there was a cut. I coughed really bad. Yeah, next turn. Another island. Another island. I'll just do it like this, I guess. Blue, black for the ancient one. We don't have... Is it 8 or more cards? Permanent cards. View all. We don't have 8 or more permanents. I know. 1, 2, 3. We only have 3, so it doesn't do anything right now. But it's still an 8/8, which isn't that bad. Also, this gets a +1/+1 counter. We do have 2 mana, but there's nothing to do with it. I think we played an island this turn. This doesn't do anything. So let's pass. Ooh, this is a really good one. 1 black, blue. Dreadwing Scavenger. When it ETBs, is it discard then draw or draw then discard? Draw 1 card and then discard 1 card. I'm thinking we can discard the Cura. No. We have enough lands right now, so I'm thinking we get rid of Crumbling Necropolis because that makes us we have 4 permanents in our graveyard. Then I'll pass. We're on turn 7, which isn't that great for what we're doing. I would play a Tainted Isle, 1, 2 blue for Kiara the Rising Tide. When she enters, we draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. We'll discard... I'll get rid of a... That's 5 mana. That is pretty good. Also, we are gaining life, right? No, it just deals 1 damage, okay. I'll discard the Swamp and Stitch together. How big is our graveyard? We have 1 permanent, 2 permanents, 3 permanents, 4 permanents, 5 permanents. We have 5 permanents. We're almost at them. And this gets us tokens? So, yeah, we have more than 7 cards in our grave. So every turn we're going to get a fucking 8/8 token, which is really nice. Let's go. Dreadwing would swing in and this would swing in. I would draw a card, then discard a card. So draw a card... And then discard a card is I think what we would be doing. And then our final thing would be nothing. Because I don't want to discard what I have in my hand right now. Because this could be a really good finisher for us next turn or whatever. Draw. I don't want to do this. Do I want to activate? Because I can go to... No, because then it would discard a land and everything would mill nothing. We do get an 8/8. What is its bestow cost? 2 black, black? Creature cards in all graveyards. So I wouldn't be able to accurately do that, but because this would just be 2, right? It would just be Stitcher Supplier and Foggy Swamp Spirit Keeper. So it would just be a +2/+2. That's not worth it right now. If I do this, I can mill 5 cards, which is kind of absurd when you think about it. But right now, I think I'm going to swing. Oh, this gets another +1/+1 counter. I think I'm going to swing. And then I would make, where is it? Is it Sign? Yeah, Sign of the Deep token. Is it tapped and attacking? No, but we do get like an 8/8 giant token. We also draw a card, then discard a card. I'll discard this island. And then at the end of the main step or whatever, second main, I would play. Post-combat main phase, sorry. I'd play a Drown Yard. 1 blue, black, tap it, mill 3. 1, 2, 3. That's what I'm talking about, man. Those are all bangers, I think. um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there's so this can attack now, right? Oh, we don't. Do we have 7 or 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8. So this can attack and block now, and then this will still make the tokens or whatever. We're doing pretty fucking good. Okay, penultimate turn. Also, this gets a +1/+1 counter, right? Draw a card. Okay, do that. I want to do the Ancient One's effect. This isn't a great thing, but one blue, black. And then that's 2 blue, black, right? Because this is blue, black, this is 2. Okay. So we draw a card. Whoops. Draw a card. We discard a card. And then we can mill ourselves. I think I'm going with Coiling Rebirth. Ugh. We already lost, I think, some of our other things. I'm going with Night Howler. And then we mill 3 cards. That's the downside, man. Let's... When it dies, right? That's pretty good. I'm going to sacrifice a token. Also, they just lost a bunch of life because of Seer Conrad. The Chasm Skulker. And then I'll get rid of... No, I'll attack, make another token, and then sacrifice that token. In order to flash back... where is it? In order to flash back Dread Return. And yeah, there's no mana cost. So I can bring back a bunch of things. I'll bring back Chasm Skulker. Chasm Skulker triggers, so I get 7 squid tokens with Island Walk, I guess. And then add a counter. Whoops. Add a counter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we get 7 of these fucking things. And then I didn't choose to attack with that, so. Alright, final turn. This is it, guys. Oh god. Are there 5 or more? There has to be, right? Does 0 count? So Swamp is 0. Dread Return is 4. Soul of the Lost is 2. Night Howler's 3. How many do I need? 5? Oh my god, do we not have... That's 1. And then... Are you kidding me? Is that 1, 2, 3 different mana values? 4 different mana values. I think there's 5. Let's just assume there's 5, because I'm pretty sure. Tainted Indulgence, draw 2 cards. Holy shit. This is actually pretty good. I don't want to... Let's just go all in on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dreadhound. It mills 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I think we're doing pretty good. We would attack with you. We'd get a fucking 8/8, right? So we would get a Scion of the Deep. We would attack with you. We would draw a card, then discard a card. That seems pretty good. We'll revive it later. And then this gets a +1/+1 counter. It also gets 2 more because we drew 2 cards. In addition, they lost like 24 life total has been lost by them so far, whatever. Probably more. I think actually more, but whatever. I think that's pretty good for 10 turns or whatever. I don't know. This is basically what the deck does. Like, it is a nice resource loop. I probably should have used my commander's ability more or whatever. And the worst part, like the worst feeling about this deck is that like milling non-permanents or whatever. That's always a feels bad when it's like, damn it, I milled a revival spell or whatever. I think I need to find more cards that get non-permanents from my graveyard to my hand, but I don't know if blue or black can do that, because black can only do creatures, right? And then blue doesn't really get recursion. I think there's probably some blue card that gets back an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, but whatever. I really like the deck. Its ramp is a bit off or whatever, but this is what can happen when it gets going. You probably, like, it took a minute to get going, but I can make an 8/8 every turn. That's a cool thing too, is having a big Chasm Skulker, sacrificing it for something, and then reviving it to make even more tokens. It's really good or whatever. I don't know. It's a bit slow and it's a bit basic, but I think this is a really fun deck, and if you really like graveyard stuff and don't like overly complicated decks, I think this is a pretty good choice.